Okay, so welcome back. And to those just joining us now, just to remind you or to inform you that we've changed somewhat from our originally planned format of parallel breakout rooms. And instead, we are running through our three panels consecutively. There will be another 10-minute break after this panel before the next one. If you have any questions to the panelists, please use the Q&A. The chat has now been disabled. Everybody should be able to access the Q&A. So our second panel is devoted to language in UNESCO Network Cities of Culture. And it's my pleasure to introduce the panel's moderator, Ivan Waidson. Ivan is one of the co-founders of Manchester City of Languages. He's the executive director of Manchester City of Literature, based at Manchester City Council, and his responsibilities include the organization and management of a very dense civic calendar of cultural events that includes the Festival of Libraries, World Poetry Day, as well as the annual International Mother Language Day. And many other projects that are dedicated to sustaining Manchester's ambition to be a creative city. So over to you, Ivan.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Hello, everyone. I'll just say a bit more about the UNESCO Creative Cities, then I'll hand over to my panelists to introduce themselves and tell you a bit about their cities. So a lot of people are very familiar with UNESCO World Heritage Sites, less so UNESCO Creative Cities. So creative cities, there are 350 creative cities around the world, selected by UNESCO as a permanent designation. And those cities commit to use culture and creativity to look for to build resilient, inclusive and sustainable cities. Within the Cities of Literature network, we have 55 members across 6 continents. Just recently, we welcomed our first Japanese city, our first Indian city. We have 2 African cities in the Middle East and North Africa, and in Latin America, as well as Europe, Australasia and North America. So today, we're just looking at 3 cities, Manchester, Gothenburg and Leeuwarden. Very conscious that for this session, that's Western European. So excuse us, we're not representing the full diversity of the cities of literature, but that's our focus for today. And I think within that, you'll see our approaches to using multilingualism in our individual context. So what I'm going to do, I'll be here representing Manchester alongside Anja Malik, who I'll introduce in a moment. And we have 2 colleagues from Gothenburg and 1 from Leeuwarden. So if I'll ask them to introduce themselves, but colleagues, if you could also talk a bit about your city at the same time. So talk about your role and then talk about the city's population profile, the languages represented in the city and so on. So if I start with you, Ernst, and talk about Leeuwarden, then I'll go to Gothenburg and then myself and Anjem will come in. So Ernst, I'll hand over to you.
Yes, thank you, Ivan, for the introduction. My name is Ernst Bruinsma. I work for Leeuwarden City of Literature. Leeuwarden, you might not know, it's a small city in the northern part of the Netherlands. And what's special about our city that it is bilingual. So the Netherlands have officially 2 languages, Dutch, of course, and also Frisian. Frisian is actually very much related to English. Leeuwarden is a small city, I said, of 100,000 inhabitants, but we work for the whole province, and the whole province has around 650 inhabitants. I think almost everybody in this province and in this city can understand Frisian, but only a small amount of them can really write them. And that is one of the challenges of our City of Literature. But as a City of Literature, we are committed to fostering the development of a professional literary community using as many languages as we possibly can. And besides that, we also address the problem of low literacy and, of course, multilingualism. I think that's enough for the introduction.
Okay, thank you, Ernst. I'll hand over now to Joachim and then Amor.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Thank you for having us here today. It's great. I'm Joachim Albrektsson. I'm working with the Gothenburg City of Literature. Gothenburg, just to put it in some context, is the second largest city of Sweden. Some 600,000 people living here, and it's situated on the west coast of Sweden, and the largest port not only of Sweden but in all of Scandinavia. So we have been, and it was founded in 1621. So ever since, I think that the tasks and challenges concerning migration and immigration has been very present. And I could say, as a City of Literature, we are very young and very much in the learning process. We were designated in 2021. So we are in the beginning of a hopefully long and fruitful journey. And we is important to point out is not only the city of Gothenburg but also the region of the Western Sweden, which contains of 49 municipalities. Where Gothenburg is by far the largest one, and also the University of Gothenburg is a part of the founding members, as well as the Writers' Center West and the House of Literature of Gothenburg and the Gothenburg Book Fair. So we have this six-party cooperation group. Establishing the work of the City of Literature and the challenges, and I think Amor will get a little bit more into detail about that. But they are the same as you mentioned, Ernst, with multilingualism and so on, and social differences. Of course. There's so much to say, but I think I stop here for now, and I'll get back to our work. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. My name is Amor Segerhammar. I work as a unit manager in the Language Center in Gothenburg. And we organize mother tongue classes in more than 70 different languages for around 12,000 students from kindergarten to upper secondary school. We also provide study guidance and assessment testing of newly arrived students. So in Sweden, we have a long tradition of promoting multilingualism and mother tongue education. Students who have another mother tongue language other than Swedish have the right to apply for mother tongue education. So it's a subject of its own, and it's got its own curriculum. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Amor. I'll just say a few words about Manchester, then I'll hand over to Anjum. So Manchester's a city of about 550,000 residents. Just in the last census, population census, it's a city that's now 51% global majority. So it's all for decades has been a multicultural city, and that is increasing with sort of recent arrivals. Manchester City Council adopted International Mother Language Day in 2016, as an official calendar day. And Manchester City Council recognises the importance of multilingualism, multiculturalism. So it's a very strong statement to say we're going to make this a day by a lot of work that was started by Yaron and colleagues at the University of Manchester with the Multilingual Manchester Initiative. And again, in Manchester, it's really about looking at community cohesion and civic pride and collective identity that we're celebrating multilingualism. Well, I know that's slightly different from other participants in other panels on this call. The City Council, there's work in 2013 that Yaron led, identified up to 200 languages spoken in Manchester. And the City Council translate public information into 7 languages currently. So I'll just hand over now to my colleague Anjem to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Yeah. Hi. Nice to meet you all on the panel, and hello everyone. Yes. I am a city poet laureate for Manchester City of Literature. I also am a scriptwriter and a poet, and I also work as a senior lecturer at Manchester Metropolitan University. And I'm not from Manchester, but I have been living here for quite a while now. And so I've been very involved before working with City of Literature and the university. I was coming here as a poet, and I've always performed my poems and I write my dramas in I have other languages, but the main other language I have is Urdu, which I write in, as well as as well as English, and I've done drama and poetry in that. And so yeah, it's something which has been really close to my heart, multilingualism, long before it was being recognized as it is now. And one of the fantastic things Manchester is really good at is recognizing that, and being very very active and a pioneer in so many other things, but especially in language and creativity. It's a real honor and joy to be part of this city as a creative.
That's great. Thank you very much, Anjem. The Cities of Literature Network is all about sharing and cooperation. And it's very nice, Anjem, to say ways in which Manchester is pioneering, but we also have to acknowledge we don't know everything. We do look to colleagues in other cities to understand their situation and learn from them. So again, it's in that spirit that we've been talking as a network. How do we learn from each other? What's your particular circumstance, your city circumstances, and what can we take from how you're approaching multilingualism and learn from that? So last year at our Cities of Literature conference, we looked particularly at multilingualism, and we identified several different ways in which language is working across our cities. And we're going to use that as the structure for our discussion. So in a moment, we'll talk about language as welcome, and then we'll think about language as honouring traditions and culture. And then we'll think about language as identity. And we'll finish talking about some of the opportunities as well as challenges that multilingualism presents. So if we go in the same order, if Ernst, I could turn to you and talk about that notion of language as welcome and how that manifests itself in Leeuwarden.
Well, the situation in Leeuwarden is indeed a bit different because, as I said, we are a bilingual province. So, for instance, I was raised in Frisian by my parents, and Dutch is my second language. But I was brought up in Holland, so almost everything here is in Dutch. So there's a strong policy of protecting the Frisian language, and I think City of Literature is one of the instruments that is being used to protect that language. And that is also and another thing on this subject is that we are also a city who welcomes a lot of refugees, and we are also a former colonizer. So there also live a lot of people from Indonesia, from the Dutch Antilles, from Turkey, from Morocco, and so on in our country. And well, for instance, last year we started. Since last year we participate in a project that welcomes newcomers in our community. It's directed to refugees. Refugees who don't have any status yet of maybe becoming an inhabitant of our country or not, and it's all about the interpretation of the ancient poet philosopher Rumi. Now is the time to say new things, and the participants in these projects are all newcomers in our community from different backgrounds, and they make new poems and lyrics in different languages, among others English, Farsi, Arabic, and Turkish, telling their own stories about the journeys they undertook to find a new home. So that is one of the projects we're doing for other languages than Dutch and Frisian.
That's a great example. That, thank you very much. And again, as you say, the fact you are bilingual gives, I don't think that addresses all the issues of being a bilingual city, but it does give some protection. Hand over now to...
We understand the necessity of protecting your own language and be able to use your own language.
Yeah, thank you. I think Amor, you might be answering this, but just talk about that notion of welcome in Gothenburg and how that manifests itself.
Well, in Gothenburg, it's an advantage that that we have a reception unit for. So within 2 months of arrival for newly arrived students, they go through an assessment test. And the main purpose is to help them find the strengths and the needs of every student and give them a placement in the schools to better help them develop their skills. But it's also a way for families to get information about how school works. So it's like, what can you say? It's a reception unit where you can have help with a lot of practical things. But the focus is, of course, helping students find a placement in the schools. And then automatically, newly arrived students, they have the right to get study guidance, and they're also encouraged to apply for mother tongue education.
It's a fantastic, and I think that's quite unique in sort of Western Europe, isn't it? That sort of right that's enshrined in law.
Yes, I should say that it's Sweden is a leading position when it comes to mother tongue education. It's really a privilege. I can sign that myself because I've also been a student of mother tongue education.
Thank you. Anjem, can I turn to you? And what's your thoughts on how we're using language as welcome in Manchester?
As a city, you mean, or as part of the City of Literature? Well, as a city, you know, we have similar to Gothenburg. We have a lot of new arrivals and refugees coming all the time. So we have mother tongue, and with International Mother's Days, we have events going through the city where we are working with. I personally have done a lot of work with new arrivals as a poet on a regular basis, where I have worked with schools or organizations where we use language, different languages, and maybe different themes to work with new arrivals to help them settle into the city, and just to tell their story, really. I mean, you know, maybe not so much to because that's not my job. It's more as a creative person. We have several events going on throughout the city where we have languages presented. So is there anything else, Ivan, I'm missing out?
Well, you've talked to me before about the anthology that you did in Bradford, which obviously is a different city in the north of England. But I thought that was quite an interesting story about ensuring that it was in mother tongue. So do you want to share about that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's really interesting. That was a book which, because my family, when we arrived in England, we went to live in Bradford as a family. And Bradford has a huge history of migration, especially of South Asians. And so there was a book, a collection, which is only in South Asian languages. There is no English. And it was put together with the support of the Bradford Library, which I have a copy of. And I'm in it, and so is my mother. Mother's poem is in there as well, because she was very instrumental in me being multilingual, because when we arrived in England, my school told her I would not be able to study Urdu and take exams in it. So so there was a big movement in Bradford by South Asians to preserve their language. And when I started out as a poet, would only read poems in Urdu, with refusing to translate them to the audiences, who were almost always non-Asian around the country, who never stopped inviting me back, even though I was. But it was a point I was proving, because I saw people struggle who didn't speak English and being mistreated, and I was lucky enough to always speak English. I spoke English as one of my first languages, and so it's really important, I think. Mother, I mean, I don't know if I agree with this term mother tongue, but your original, because I have several mother tongues, original languages, but I think it's really, really important, because my mother found the examining board herself, helped me study at home. When I was listening to the other speakers earlier on the earlier panel, it was so good to hear what they're doing for mother tongues, because my mother just taught me and my sisters on her own, and then she found out how we could enter the exams, and then she turned up at the school, and we had quite a very unhelpful, very monocultural head teacher who didn't think having more than one language would help. He thought it would make us not. It just wasn't. He had a different idea of, since then it's been proved that being multilingual is very advantageous for you as a developing person, for your brain and for you as a person. But yeah, she turned up and she said, "Here are the details. I want my daughter to take exams in this, like in her own language." And I did, and I've never stopped writing in Urdu. This is. Before I was a writer, I was working in the police. When I left as a police officer, I carried on helping them as an interpreter, and many other organizations around the country to do with immigration, courts, hospitals, So my language and the languages my mother made sure I learned has been tremendously helpful for me, and also all the people I've worked with, So it's just one example, and I'm sure it's a very common story of how, when you can speak more than one language, you bring so much to the world, and it's important that we preserve them and promote them.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think just thinking about Manchester as well, so we don't have that notion of the language centre in Gothenburg and that really structured support and that right. But there's a lot of work that happens that's often, if you like, the city council will play a leadership role in the way that I talked about in terms of establishing International Mother Language Day and talk about the importance. And then it's how public or private and other partners, often communities, can come together. And I was just thinking the work that we have recent waves of people fleeing the war in Ukraine. And again, our Manchester libraries have been very good about getting more Ukrainian literature, both children's books and adults books, onto the shelves, and then have been working to provide there's a lot of boards that welcome people in both Ukrainian and English to the library and tell them run weekly sessions, and free walking tours have been set up. Now, this is an individual initiative, a private initiative, but free walking tours of Manchester in Ukrainian to welcome people. So it's often that partnership approach as well. Ernst, do you want to come in?
Yeah, something interesting is happening in Holland, I think, because our libraries also buy Ukrainian literature and put them on shelves, and buy books all around for refugees. But that has never been the case for people from Indonesia or the Dutch Antilles, or in their languages, or in Arabic languages. So I don't know if it's a one-time event, or maybe something is changing at our libraries too. But I was glad to hear you mention this.
And it could be related to, I don't know, confidence and experience with different languages amongst library staff. But Amor, you wanted to come in? Sorry, you're on mute, Amir.
I would just like to add that the Ukrainian government has been incredible in creating online resources. When we had received a lot of Ukrainian students, they were automatically connected to their online classes in Ukraine, with teachers sitting in Ukraine and teaching the students in Sweden. It was incredible, especially for the older students.
Okay, thank you for that. Ernst, can I come back to you on this idea of languages honouring traditions and cultures? Can you talk to us about that point?
Yeah, well, I mentioned a few times our former Dutch colonies, and I think we're not doing a lot for those languages. The Papiamentu, especially from South America, from the Dutch Antilles, is protected in some ways. But I don't think we do a lot for Arabic languages, and for Bahasa Indonesia, we don't do anything at all. We know the Indonesian literature, but always in translation. So I think there is something to do, left to be done for us and for other parties. Yeah. Yeah, I'll leave it to that.
Okay, thank you. Can I go to Joachim and Amor, just in terms of the Gothenburg perspective on honouring traditions and cultures?
Yes, of course. Amor, maybe you should start if you want, and I can fill in.
Okay, so maintaining proficiency in their mother tongue helps the students to connect with their family, cultural heritage, and communities. So in the Language Center, we try to collaborate with different networks and organizations. We work with the university for teachers training, and we also work with the schools, of course, the museums, the libraries. We celebrated 400th anniversary of Gothenburg 2 years ago, and our students compiled a book for their future dreams. 400 students wrote the future dreams in Swedish and in their own languages, and that was our gift to the city. And it's an ongoing need to raise awareness of the importance of multiculturalism and multilingualism, and also the importance of mother tongue language in the city. So we take all those chances that we have, and that's why I have a contact with Joachim, because he's now the head of the literature of the city.
Yeah, interesting.
Sorry, Ivan, just a quick short add to this. And yeah, the reason, one of the benefits of being a city of literature is that you have some kind of new power in order to establish connections, corporations, etc., who might have been established anyway, but you get something extra, and that's the reason why Språkcentrum or Language Center and Amor and I and the City of Literature. I work at the culture department of Gothenburg, so we're in the same family, so to say, but we haven't met before. So this is to a great part due to the fact that we are a City of Literature, which is of course a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anjem,
Mhm.
do you want to talk about some Mashira model?
Yeah, of course. But
Yeah.
before I do, I really want to say I love the idea of the colonizer paying back by, promoting languages they may have been part in destroying. So I really like that. And I also love the idea of where you're doing the poetry groups for destitute, I don't know if you said unrecognized or destitute asylum seekers. Amazing ideas, which I would love to talk about doing here. Mashira, I don't know if people are aware, some of you might know. Mashira is a name for a poetry gathering in the South Asian poetry tradition. So it's a name for, and the Mashira can comprise of just a handful of people in somebody's front room. I've attended Mashiras in Pakistan, for example, and there have been bigger groups than a football ground, like a big Manchester United football ground, and they go through the night. Like you see the dawn come up and poet. It's amazing the amount of devotion and celebration which goes. But it's also an incredibly involved way of poetry reading, because there is very much audience participation, and where as the poet performs, recites, shares their poetry, the audience join in, and they make a lot of noise. And when I first started performing as a poet, I found the silence, because I was here in England, really off-putting, because it felt like nobody liked my poetry. So I train the audiences. There's always a mini training session where you have to learn how to react. And so one of the main terms audiences use is wah-wah, which kind of means praise. And if they like something you're saying, they go wah-wah. They can all, and it's amazing. Children, when you go into schools, love that. They really take to it. Older people can be a little bit shy, especially if it's a smaller group of audiences. But then the audience can also ask you to repeat lines, which is really, like as a poet, it's of course really nice because people want to hear. And you know what? The best thing is they ask you to repeat it, and then they repeat your lines with you. So they might say, "Can you say it again?" You can, and so it's a very give and take kind of performance where it's live and exciting, and it's a really wonderful model, which seems to go down really well. I mean, it literally takes seconds to get people going. And I've also helped set up Mashiras, especially ever since I've been working in poetry as a poet. But I also, like most things, Mashiras were commandeered by men, South Asian men, and there was a lot of hierarchy. So you'd have like a line of people on stage, and there'd be like the president, the secretary. I may have some of these names. Basically, a hierarchy system, and there would almost always be men, maybe occasional women. So I kind of changed it as soon as I was given first residency I did here a long time ago in York. I came up to the Northwest to do it from London. I decided we would not have any hierarchy system. There would be no president or secretary. There would just be the poet, and we would have men, we would have women, and we would have children, and we would have anybody who wanted to read in English, read in English. because a lot of younger people don't speak or write in Urdu, so I wanted them to be part of it. And it was, I almost had got, I thought I was going to get thrown out because somebody did stand up and object to me coming in and breaking up tradition. In this huge hall, which was full of Asians who turned up for this first Mushara. But I'm glad to say that everybody told him to either sit down or leave because they were really excited. And so I've gone on to do a lot of Musharas where because I love our tradition, but I want them to be more inclusive. And as the world has gone on, you know, talking about new arrivals, I've been working with a lot of South Asians who come from Italy and Spain at the moment, you know, over the last few years. So they speak amazing, you know, you've got these originally Pakistani kids speaking beautiful Punjabi and then Italian at the same time. So it's really nice to be able to encourage them to, all those languages are their languages. You know, the world is becoming very mixed, and it's really nice to be able to use our very rich poetry culture like the Mushara to promote poetry and make it more exciting.
Thank you for that, Anjum. I think it speaks to the theme about Utopia of this panel discussion about how can we get that balance right, that we are celebrating all that mix. Because I know with the Mushara model, you're right, there is a tradition to it, and I love what you've done to break down those traditions where they're not inclusive. And certainly I've seen one of the schools Mushara where there's been a poet supporting young people who's Polish, writes in Polish as well as English. So again, just how you expand that model in a really positive way that still honours the tradition, but also does inclusion. And it doesn't always work for everyone, but I think there's something there we need to keep working on. I think we've only got about 5 minutes left now, and we've got 2 sections. So maybe if I can ask our panelists to put the 2 together, and we'll see if we've got any questions. So we're just thinking about language as identity, and we've touched on a lot that might cover this. But maybe, Ernst, if I can start with you, think about language as identity, and then maybe any challenges and opportunities that you see for multiculturalism in Leeuwarden.
Yeah, let me talk about the Frisian language, and in contrast to the Dutch language. Frisian is spoken in many places in everyday life, in the supermarket, at schools, at the doctor's surgery, and so on. It's the language of the heart, I could say. And a complicating factor for us is that strong relationship between language and identity in Friesland and Leeuwarden is that it's a spoken language, and that most of the people living here can't read or write in this language. It does not come easily to be a substantial part of the Frisians, to write and to read Frisian. So I think that is one of the challenges for us as a City of Literature to address to this particular problem. And then more in general, I think as a City of Literature, we have a unique position to create and stimulate exchanges between the different languages. And that is what we do with our colleague cities.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I hand over to you, Amor and Joachim?
Yeah, Amor, please.
Well, if a student feels that the mother tongue is valued in its competence, then we see that it could foster self-confidence and motivation for learning in general. But of course, there are also some challenges like lack of research and data on the impact of mother tongue education in the long term, and so its impact on cultural identity. And there's also a challenge of limited resources. It's difficult to find teachers in all languages. And also some families prefer to focus on the Swedish language for better integration. So there are some of those issues as well. But we also have to address the opportunities that it gives in terms of academic benefits. and also social benefits, that it promotes inclusion and better understanding of cultural, of different cultures. So, and it's also a lot of research that shows that they can have a better confidence and also, as I've said, motivation if they have their language and preserve their languages.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there any time left for me, Ivan?
I've seen Yaron appear, so have we got just 2 minutes, Yaron?
1 minute, if we can reduce it to
1 minute. I'll go
minute.
to you. Go on.
Thank
Okay,
you.
yeah, and Amor, you put it out so good, and I just want to mention as well that we do have on a national level, we do have an act of Language Act, which secures in theoretical way at least that persons has the opportunity, to be given the opportunity to develop and use their mother tongue. So that's a good ground, so to say, and that the public sector is responsible for ensuring that the individual is given access to language in this matter. However, in practical, there is another story, and one of my concerns is I'm not sure about the political willingness and knowledge, etc., in Sweden in general about funding, because it's and this is so boring, but it's about funding in the long term, and there are signals now which are not so easy to read, or might be very easy to read, namely that there should be a decrease in the resource given to mother tongue, mother language. So I don't want to end in this matter. We had a meeting yesterday within the frame of the City of Literature of Gothenburg. We have an action plan as every City of Literature have, and one of the focus areas is the city who reads to the children, and we gathered some 40 different actors, organizations, representatives, etc. And it was so many positive things both going on and in the pipeline, so to say. So there is some kind of bright future as well. I would finish with. Thank you.
Thank you. I've just had a quick, very positive thing. 2 things. I think we didn't touch on it. I think, Amor, you talked really well about the social and individual benefits of multilingualism, but there's some economic opportunities as well. And I'm just thinking, in terms of inbound tourism, but also a city as a global player and global market. And then just a small example of identity. I was from Manchester Library today. They've been running a family fun day for International Mother Language Day. And a lot of that is given over to different societies. And there was a Lithuanian society there who had elders and young people celebrating, being Lithuanian. And I think there's something really positive just in those small steps where we can give a platform and celebrate those identities that bring such richness to our city. Okay. So thank you, everyone. I'll hand back to Yaron now.
Thank you all very, very much for these inspiring insights. And when we talk about bringing together knowledge and action, you have created and you run structures and institutions that allow to do just that and complement what the grassroots, so to speak, are doing and try to actually implement what some of the top-down legislation, where it does exist, allows you to do that. And that's really wonderful. So we've got about 6 or 7 minutes left of the break. Let's try and come back at 5:50 UK time for our final panel. Thank you very much.
And I would like to remind everybody that if you want to ask a question, you need to use the Q&A, or if you have problem accessing it, you can send your question to me. My email is available. Thank you.